In today's video, we have the latest NHL trade talk for the offseason concerning teams like Montreal Canadiens, the Winnipeg Jets, as well as the Anaheim Ducks. We could see some pretty significant moves amongst those teams. We also have word on two big names retiring today, including Muriel Hossa and Ryan Getzlaf. We have some injury updates, a few signings, and more. All that coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to talk about here today. First up, let's go through a few quick injury updates. We have word from the Vancouver Canucks that they're going to be without a few players here for some time. Brock Besser is going to be out. No really clear-cut answer on when he'll be back or if his season is over or what have you, but he did suffer an arm shoulder injury the other game, and he is not on the current road trip and will be out indefinitely for right now until they get further evaluations determining, I guess, a more accurate timeline. Coach Bruce Boudreau also mentioned the fact that Tucker Poolman and Hoglander have both been out for some time, that their seasons are likely over. So certainly some not great news there for Vancouver, who was basically, even though they're still mathematically involved in the playoff race, are basically out at this point after not being able to pick up a few more wins recently and kind of falling back here in the standings. The Ottawa Senators had Tyler Ennis in the last game, which was a milestone game for him. Game 700, suffer it appears to be a fairly serious shoulder injury, and his season is likely over as well. On some positive news, Bowen Byram, the Colorado Avalanche, is scheduled to return. So obviously it's been a long time since he's been out. He's dealt with multiple concussions in his young career, and hopefully he can stay healthy and avoid any further head injuries for sure. And of course, we thought Jake Muzzin was returning to the Leafs last night against the Lightning. That did not happen, but apparently he is scheduled to play tonight as they visit the Florida Panthers and continue their trip here through the Sunshine State. They had a good big night against the Lightning last night. Obviously, let's see if they can continue things going here against the Florida Panthers. And of course, in that game, you have Austin Matthews coming off a hat trick against the Lightning last night, tying the franchise record for most goals in a season, with what's currently held by Rick Vaive at 54. So he now shares that with Matthews. So Matthews will, with one more goal in the season, will set the record. I know that should not be an issue with the number of games left. At this point, I would think he's likely going to surpass 60. I know that was my early preseason prediction. If you look back, one of the predictions I made in that video, I know a lot of them won't be right, but one that will be is I said that Matthews would win the Rocket, likely to score 60 or more goals on the season and break the Leaf record. So looks as though he's on pace to do that, and the franchise record could come as early as tonight. Now, on to a few other signings as well. The Avalanche announced that they've extended big tough defenseman Curtis McDermott. He gets a 2-year deal. Year one is going to be valued at $975,000. Year two is $1 million rate on the money. So that gives him an average annual value of like $987.50, I believe, or $987.5. So that's a pretty good value for what he brings. Certainly gets some more toughness and muscle on that backhand, which we know was an issue in last year's playoffs, and he's fit in quite nicely there, so the signing certainly makes sense for sure. And the Penguins announced today that they've signed one of their prospects here, Lucas Svechkovsky, who gets his 3-year entry-level contract, which will kick in next season. He's having a pretty solid year in the WHL, putting up 32 goals, 41 assists for 73 points right now. And actually, he is a second-generation NHL player, in case you don't know that. His dad, Yaroslav Svechkovsky, is his father, who played a number of seasons in Washington and Tampa. Didn't get a ton of NHL games, but he was an NHL player with those franchises. And of course, Svechkovsky was taken in the 4th round back in 2020. So it looks like a pretty decent prospect on the rise there for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, as I mentioned, we have some big names announcing retirements today. One player's already basically been retired for some time, and it's Muriel Hossa, who did not even complete the remainder of his contract, who was on long-term injury reserve for the last few years of that, which was due to some skin condition. I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but it's some sort of a skin condition, which I guess couldn't wear hockey equipment, couldn't play because of it. I'm not sure the exact specifications, just know that some kind of skin condition prevented him from being on the ice. But he is going to be signing a one-day contract with the Blackhawks on Thursday and retiring as a Blackhawk here to end things. I mean, he's already been, like I said, out of the game for a while, just hadn't made things official. So we already knew that. But I mean, Hossa's had one heck of a career. 1,309 games played, well over 500 at 525 goals, 609 assists, 1,134 points, and of course 3 Stanley Cups, all with Chicago in 2010, 13, and 15. Of course, he started with the Ottawa Senators, had a real solid start to his career, was involved with the trade for Danny Heatley at the Atlanta Thrashers, went on to play a few years in Atlanta, then of course bounced around. He went 3 straight years with different teams, but went to the Cup final. He started with Pittsburgh, didn't get his Cup, went to Detroit, and of course Pittsburgh-Detroit played back-to-back years in the Stanley Cup final. He played on both sides of it, one year after the other, first in Pittsburgh, then in Detroit, not getting the Cup either time, and then he goes on to Chicago and gets his 3 Stanley Cups afterwards, but still one of the best to ever do it. Certainly had a heck of a career. It'd be nice to see him officially get recognized in retirement. I guess you might want to question why now, but I know he was recently made an appearance for the Blackhawks, got a big ovation. Maybe the Blackhawks just realized, maybe it's time they finally take care of this since his contract expired at the end of last year as a member of the Coyotes, where he was getting paid at the end of that contract while being on long-term injury reserve. But the more, bigger announcement today was Ryan Getzlaf, longtime captain of the Anaheim Ducks, and made the announcement today and held a press conference announcing that this is going to be his final NHL campaign, and he will be retiring at the end of the season. Actually, it sounds like he's not even going to play the last couple of games. Their last home game, I believe, is the 24th, I think it is, against the St. Louis Blues. That will be Getzlaf's final NHL game. They do have a quick little mini 2-game road trip to close out the season, but from what I understood from the press conference, he's not going to be playing in those games. So as of today, Getzlaf has 1,150 games played, 282 goals, 731 assists for 1,013 points, has 1 Stanley Cup to his name, which came in the second season in the NHL in 2007 when the Anaheim Ducks defeated the Ottawa Senators in 5 games. Back in 2007, it was a big year for them, obviously. Getzlaf and Perry, even though they were, long-time, big-time members of that team, they were just, young guys with a major supporting cast around them, with another group of veterans that were obviously leading the team at that time. They certainly were big contributors as well, helping the team reach the Cup. Of course, he has numerous World Junior golds, Olympic golds to his name, represented Team Canada numerous times, but obviously decided after 17 years in the NHL that it's time to take a step back, basically indicating he always said that his mind and body would kind of let him know when it was time. In conjunction with that, he's got a young family, several small little kids, and he wants more family time, which you can only certainly respect and appreciate. He said he wants to be able to play with his kids, not just be watching his kids from a distance. So certainly very respectable in that sense. His parents flew down to be a part of the ceremony, which I'm not even sure he was aware of. I think that was a bit of a surprise, but we'll see here how he finishes them up. But certainly he's had a heck of a career. He's not really much left for him to accomplish. Explains maybe why at the deadline he wasn't dealt. I know last year there was some talk and it was close to happening where he almost left, but now he gets to finish his career as a member of the Ducks, a member of one organization the entire time, which for some players is an important thing to accomplish, which isn't really all that common anymore these days. But he certainly has lots to be proud of, and his career will come to an end soon. So let me know down in the comments, do you think Ryan Getzlaf is a Hall of Famer? Is he first ballot Hall of Famer? How do you think that's going to work out for him? I do think he makes it to the Hall of Fame. I'm not 100% sure he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, though. It just kind of depends on who he's up against. I know I've seen some comparisons against a guy like Daniel Alfredsson, for example. The only difference really is that Alfredsson doesn't have the Stanley Cup, but he has a lot of other comparable statistics, and we'll see. I mean, he's not in yet either, so it just really kind of depends. But I think he's accomplished enough, and he's been on enough big time winning teams, not only in the NHL but internationally, that I think he will get there for sure. Just not 100% sure it's first ballot, but we'll see when that happens. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Now, obviously, we want to take a look at some NHL trade talk and some off-season stuff here. Now, there was another article today. I know we talked about Carey Price a few times lately, but it just seems like the news articles and the people chiming in on the scenario here just keeps adding up pretty much on a daily basis. I came across another article today, this time from the Montreal Gazette, And this one is basically talking about the fact that they felt there's two prongs here. I want to talk about Price and Weber for that matter. I know Weber's not going to be playing anymore, but still we'll get into that in a second. But when it comes to Carey Price, the author of this Montreal Gazette article also again feels that Jeff Gorton and Ken Hughes want to move on from Carey Price this offseason, and that essentially hoping he gets back to play games will help showcase him. And if they can move him this summer, it's certainly something they intend to likely discuss with him and hopefully accomplish. So, I mean, like I said, we've had numerous NHL reporters and different authors and writers that cover the NHL around the league now in the last 3-4 days really coming out and speaking out a lot about the fact that they feel Carey Price will not be in Montreal next year. Obviously, he'll control his fate with the no-move clause. You have to think that Montreal would have to figure out a way to retain 50% salary, maybe even involve a broker to retain some more on top of that. Hard to say. I think there would be interest, but it's hard to say what teams would be willing to give up. I don't know that the return would really be all that massive given the contract, his age, his injuries lately. Might be more of a case of just freeing up the cap space, and if they can't get much of a return, so be it. They'll take the space to do other things with. I don't really know, but I know there seems to be a lot of people out there saying that Price likely does move on, so I'll be very curious to see how this goes. This article also goes on to talk about Shea Weber and how they're kind of upset with Shea Weber. Of course, we know that after the playoffs ended last year, GM at the time, Marc Bergevin, announced that Shea Weber likely would not play another NHL game in his career, very quite possibly could be over, and that so far looks to be the case. I know Weber did not play this season, and all this, the narrative has been the same with Montreal all year, is that Weber, due to numerous injuries and ailments, will not be playing anymore. So he's basically on injured reserve for the remainder of his contract. But the article goes on to state that, obviously on opening night, even injured players that are not in the lineup or anybody who's still in the roster, but, either injured or extra, not playing that night, shows up because they always do the big announcement of the full roster, for the upcoming season. He was not present for that. He has not made any appearances at Bell Center in Montreal this year. They recently just had, this week here, I think it was yesterday, they had picture day and obviously a lot of media availability. Again, not there. Even though he's technically still the captain, they feel that even though he's unable to play, that he should be around the team a little bit more and still making some appearances. And the article really gave him a lot of grief for not doing so. So I would certainly, especially if you live in Montreal or if you're a Habs fan in general, because I know there's Habs fans in really a lot of places, not just Montreal. So I'd like to know what you think about this. Personally, I'm not really sure that it's that big of a deal. I can understand the desire to see him more and for him to speak to the media maybe a little bit more, but I'm not really sure what he's going to tell the media. I guess that's the other part about this too, is that he's never really had a media availability to discuss all the injuries and just where things are at with him, to kind of say, here's what's going on with me. I can't play anymore. It all came from Bergevin, and Weber has never, spoken to the media in a long, long time. So I don't know. I kind of see where they're coming from, but I kind of think it might be overblown and might be making way too big of a deal about it myself. So I'll link the article in the pinned comment down below if you want to have a read through it and see what they're saying. I'd like to know what you think here on it as well, especially if you're a Habs fan. Is it a big deal that Weber is not talking to the media and hasn't been around the team? Or what? I mean, I think there has been once or twice when the team has been on the road that he might have met up with them. If I'm not mistaken, I just don't think he's been at Bell Center at all. So I guess want to know what you think, and should he be giving grief over this, or is it really that big of a deal? Now on to the other trade talk here for today. I want to talk about the Anaheim Ducks. I know recently we saw information from the fourthperiod.com suggesting that John Gibson, the Ducks goaltender who's been having a solid career, was getting a lot of attention close to the NHL trade deadline, and obviously nothing happened. So it doesn't mean for sure that things are going to happen, but considering the selling spree that we saw new Ducks GM Pat Verbeek go on, trading Hampus Lindholm, Josh Manson, obviously we saw them trade Nick Delorier, Ryan Getzlaf is retiring, Rickard Rakell was traded. It's a complete changing of the guard there in Anaheim, and you have to wonder, they're obviously going to be relying a lot more on these young kids, which is certainly, the way that needs to go. But they're likely going to have some veterans stick around as well. And obviously they're not completely, without any veterans at this point, but they're certainly depleted compared to what they used to be. is John Gibson next? I mean, he's going to be, looking at like a 28-year-old guy, had a solid career. How long is it going to take the Ducks to get to that point where they're even going to be, real close to being contenders again? I mean, you've got guys like Zegras and Terry kind of having their first taste of success this year. So, and how many more pieces is it going to take to get them moving up the ranks? I mean, they have some other top prospects coming, like Mason McTavish is a real solid one. You got a youngster like Jamie Drysdale, who should be a big part of the team's blue line moving forward as well. So there's certainly going to be a team going through transition, and like we saw them kind of make some noise early in the season, but then they kind of came back down to normal. But a lot of those veterans that were helping with that are not there anymore. So, is it going to be a case where they're going to probably be at least 2, 3, 4 years, which is not really unreasonable to think, before they can start climbing up the standings? It very well could be. These kids they're great. There's a lot of great prospects there. Some great guys that are having, real immediate success. But how long is it going to take for the whole team to get up to the point where they're in the playoffs on a regular basis, or at least making it, a couple of times? It very well could be 3 or 4 years. Does Gibson want to stick around for that? Or is he open to moving? Does it make sense for the Anaheim Ducks to maybe go more of a youth movement and give more of like a young goalie, like a Lucas Dostal, a little bit more of an opportunity, for example? So, clearly there's lots of interest in Gibson. So it doesn't mean that they're going to trade him. Given the level of interest and the fact that we've seen this, Ducks kind of really go through a major sell-off, you have to think if the offseason, if he could be next. If a team comes offering a first-round pick and a good goalie prospect, you have to think that there's a real chance there that the Ducks are going to listen, and Pat Verbeek very well just might pull the trigger. Now, lastly, we want to look a little bit further again at the Winnipeg Jets. So we've seen a number of new articles today talking about a potential, offseason for the Jets, which could see significant changeover. Some even suggesting maybe more of a rebuild is required. A full kind of look through the organization, including GM Kevin Cheveldayoff, should be completed. There's also more talk about Mark Scheifele, of course, being probably the biggest name there that will get the most attention and probably get the biggest trade return. I know there was an article in the New York Post and Larry Brooks suggesting that he would be a great fit in New York City in the Big Apple, assuming that the Rangers may not re-sign Ryan Strome or Andrew Kopp, who are both unrestricted free agents coming up here this offseason. And if Mark Scheifele was available for trade, coming with a contract for the next few years, at a reasonable amount for what you get from him, that they might go down that route instead, rather than bring back one of those guys. So that's a real possibility. Of course, the Rangers have lots of prospects and young players that could be included in any kind of a trade to satisfy the Jets moving forward. They have some real interesting players that I'm sure would pique their interest, but I don't think the Rangers are the only team. I think a lot of teams would line up for an opportunity to land Mark Scheifele. He's obviously, towards the end of his 20s now, won't be far from being 30 years old, but he has a good contract, still a very productive point-per-game player. If he's a number 2 center on a lot of different teams, I think that could be a pretty dangerous 1-2 punch, depending on who he's partnered with there. But, look at some teams that are coming, up the ranks here, coming out of a rebuild. I don't know. Obviously, he does have a modified no trade, so I don't know who he'd have blocked. But clearly, you look at teams like Ottawa, Detroit, teams like that are looking to move out of the rebuild and add a solid vet or two. They could be teams that would be interested too. So I think there'd be plenty of teams looking at a Scheifele trade. Clearly, being in the Western Conference, they might prefer to send him east. I don't know, but I know that he's certainly a player that will get lots of attention, and I know many feel that he's likely the most likely in the Jets organization to be traded and shake things up this offseason. There's a lot of question marks over who's going to be their coach next year, because they have an interim coach right now in Dave Lowry. Is he going to stick around? Probably not, because they didn't have that level of success that they really needed in the bump from getting a new coach. I mean, he may remain with the organization, go back to being an assistant. I don't know. They may clean house completely. It's really hard to say. So I do think there's a reasonable to suggest that the Jets could be involved in some pretty significant deals. Wouldn't be surprised if they moved a blue liner. I know Brendan Dillon hasn't had his best season. Would they consider trading Josh Morrissey, who is certainly a good defenseman? I don't know that he's really a number 1, which is why I think that, that sometimes he gets maybe a little bit overwhelmed with what he's asked to do, because I think if he was able to play a little lower in the lineup, he would be a lot more effective and a lot better off. But let me know what you think on the Jets. Are they going to be seeing major surgery to their roster this offseason, and as well as Carey Price, as well as the other things we talked about here today? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.